The appointment of Mandelson was a serious error of judgment. I advised the Prime Minister and I was wrong to do so.
They are being whipped today to exonerate him before the facts have even been tested.
Ironic, Alanis Morissette could probably write a whole album about it.
Danger for this Labour government if they decide to move against a Prime Minister without a plan.
If you think this is a stunt, then Labour, when they were in opposition, stand guilty of exactly the same use of Parliament.
I think Prime Minister Starmer is wise to be critical of the president's foreign policy. I think that will show people that he has a backbone, and I think it'll garner him a lot of political favour long term.
For a man who won an historic landslide not 2 years ago, whipping his own MPs to see off an opposition stunt is really quite something. The fact that 15 Labour MPs defied the whip just a week before crucial elections is something else.
I feel the way that today's vote has been handled by the government smacks once again of being out of touch and disconnected from the public mood. The fact that MPs like me are being whipped into voting against this motion is, in my view, wrong, Mr. Speaker. It has played into the terrible narrative that there is something to hide.
So now he knows. Sir Keir Starmer is safe today, but how about tomorrow? Or more to the point, next week, when an expected disaster at the ballot box will make plain Labour's unpopularity. For now, though, the PM lives to fight another day, not least because the top Mandarin and Sir Keir's former Chief of Staff didn't, between them, produce a smoking gun.
Was it you who first said, Prime Minister, I've got the perfect candidate, Peter Mandelson?
I think the first person who put Mandelson's name forward was Mandelson.
That original sin, the error of judgment in appointing a man who befriended a paedophile as the UK's ambassador to the US, remains problematic for Sir Keir. But what would it look like if the Labour Party was to move against the PM in the midst of war and economic crisis? It's a point that was clearly playing on his mind when I went into number 10.
I took a very clear decision at the outbreak of the conflict in Iran that the UK would not be dragged into the conflict.
It was your Love Actually moment, wasn't it?
Well, I'm the British Prime Minister. I act in the British national interest, and it's not in our national interest to get dragged into that war.
Former White House Communications Director Anthony Scaramucci tells me he's backing Keir over Donald.
I think the Prime Minister Starmer is wise to be critical of the president's foreign policy and to distance himself. I think that will show people that he has a backbone.
Downing Street will hope the King can find his vertebrae as his state visit gets underway. What a handsome couple.
Hi, Cathy. Lovely to see you.
Come
what a
and
lovely
sit, lovely pink sofa. I know, I'm so glad you like it.
Here. You've had it knocked through or something. You've done it.
Salmon pink.
Yeah.
So listen, we're going to talk about the vote that's just happened. Can Keir survive? I'm sure you'll disagree. Save it for the programme. And then we're going to cross over to the States, talk about the US state visit. Tina Brown, top journalist, top editor and royal watcher is on. And also Anthony Scaramucci, Donald Trump's former director of communications. So
For 10 days.
Yes, indeed, yeah. I mean, is that longer or shorter than Liz Truss?
Just slightly shorter.
Anyway. Well, let's have a look at Beth Rigby's report now on yet another day when the Prime Minister's actions and reputation were under scrutiny.
The die was cast, the Prime Minister had decided, the timetable was set.
When I saw the pictures, I have to say it was like a knife through my soul.
The truth is being covered up. Today's vote is about whether they want to be complicit in this cover-up.
A trifecta of trouble for the Prime Minister. The monumental error he made in appointing Peter Mandelson as US ambassador haunting him still, as he faced two ghosts from his past, and a debate on whether to refer the Prime Minister to the parliamentary committee that took down Boris Johnson. First came Sir Philip Barton, in charge at the Foreign Office when Mandelson's appointment was announced, and by which time he says there was no turning back.
At no point did anyone consult me, ask me. I was presented with a decision. There was no space, and told to get on with it. There was no space for dialogue.
And what he didn't want to talk about was even more revealing.
Do you think the Prime Minister's statement that full due process was followed is a fair description of what happened in Mandelson's case?
I'm going to dodge. I mean, I'm not going to answer your question.
But he did say this about the timing of Mandelson's developed vetting the top level of security clearance.
It was unusual for the announcement to be made before he received DV.
Next up was Morgan McSweeney, the PM's former chief of staff and once his closest aide, here to take responsibility for giving the PM the wrong advice.
The appointment of Mandelson as ambassador was a serious error of judgment. I advised the Prime Minister in support of that appointment, and I was wrong to do so.
Advice he insists was based on lies Mandelson told him about the depth of his relationship with Epstein.
How I understood it at the time was a passing acquaintance that he regretted having and that he apologised for. What has emerged since then was way, way, way worse than I had expected at the time. And it was when I saw the pictures, when I saw the Bloomberg questions in September 2025, I have to say it was like a knife through my soul. I did not expect that level of connection that he was talking about there.
But at the time, a risk worth taking because Number 10 wanted a Trump whisperer in Washington.
I don't think the Prime Minister would have chosen Mandelson if Kamala Harris had been elected president. I think he considered about who would be the right fit for the White House.
From the Select Committee room to the floor of the House of Commons, where Starmer's opposite number made her case that the PM had misled Parliament.
The Ministerial Code is very clear. Ministers who mislead the House must correct the record, and I quote, at the earliest opportunity. It is very obvious that the Prime Minister, what the Prime Minister said at the dispatch box was not correct.
Labour MPs being whipped to vote down the Conservative motion. Starmer allies out in force.
Whilst the parties opposite, which you can hear from their chuntering and their joking and their shouting, are playing games, this Labour government is doing the work that matters.
But some Labour MPs clearly very uncomfortable.
After a career of working so closely with victims of child sexual abuse that I could not even begin to express how much it hurts me when people are screaming at me in the street that I am a member of the Pedo Protectors Party.
It is vital that ministers demonstrate the utmost transparency, and it is vital that we, as MPs, no matter our political allegiance, do not allow the impression that we are in any way attempting to cover things up for the leadership of our parties.
The Prime Minister has won this vote and for now will not be investigated by the Privileges Committee, which will be a huge relief to Number 10. Senior figures tell me that the Tories blew their chance by pressing for this so soon to the May elections and while other Mandelson investigations were already underway. But others have a different take. One senior Labour source told me that this was a very hollow victory, with many MPs quietly fuming that they've been put in this position where political opponents can accuse them of being complicit in a cover-up. And the person they blame for that is Starmer.
Do you have confidence in the Prime Minister?
Absolutely.
For now, the Cabinet putting on a united front, but beneath is a party splintering, and all bets are off after the elections in May.
Well, Beth's here on the sofa alongside former Cabinet Minister, now editor of The Spectator, Lord Michael Gove, and former Labour Party advisor and biographer of Keir Starmer, Tom Baldwin. Beth, first of all, the fact that this was a political stunt described as, 15 Labour MPs to vote for it, that's quite significant, isn't it?
Well, look, I think for Keir Starmer, what he wanted to do was get through this day. It's another day of Mandelson, the Mandelson affair in the headlines. It's another day he doesn't want to see. It's another debate about process. It's also a debate about his conduct, his judgment, and it's all very, very awkward in the run-up to elections. Now, I think that his argument that it was a political stunt, there was some severe pressure being applied to MPs overnight. And critically for him, leading figures in the party such as Angela Rayner and Lucy Powell decided to back the Prime Minister's position. And so he has come through this vote. And yes, there's been opposition, but he's clearly won a majority. And for now, the Privilege Committee is not investigating him.
But 53 abstentions as well.
Yeah, because what's that telling you? What that's telling you is, as I was saying in my report, that there is quiet fury amongst many MPs about this. They don't want to be accused by the Conservatives about being complicit in a cover-up, which is how they feel this is going to play out. Many of them would like the Privileges Committee to exonerate him because many of them think he will be exonerated. And so he's kind of, at the moment, it's a government really that's kind of living day to day. And I think what's actually more interesting about all of this is how it begins to unfold in the next few weeks, because there appears to be now a settling view amongst his cabinet and those at the top of the party that Keir Starmer is not going to fight the next general election.
Right, let's bring in Tom
the
here.
Prime Minister.
Yeah.
OK? But, sorry, just one more thing. But you ask then, well, what follows from that? And 10 different people will give you 10 different answers.
Yeah.
And that is where the chaos potentially kicks in. And that is the danger for this Labour government if they decide to move against a Prime Minister without a plan.
Tom, that's the shape of it, isn't it? Pretty damning for the Prime Minister.
No, it's been an awful time, which I think he's hated, because in a way he's sort of trapped. This last couple of weeks has been almost sort of microcosm of the last 22 months, which has all been about advisors in Downing Street and briefings and, vetting and this chief of staff and that chief of staff. And none of this is about changing the country. And the question I think he wants to, the question about him now is whether we're eternally trapped in this cycle or whether you can pivot out of it and start away from these small process stories which don't mean anything to people's lives into something really big that does. Now,
and what's your answer to that question?
Well, I think he can and I think he should. I'm not entirely certain that he will. I don't think we have to talk about who's fighting the next general election at the moment. I think we have to talk about what the agenda that Labour can unite around now, which will start changing this country in the way that it wants to do that.
So, Michael, answer the stunt point, because, you know it's a stunt, don't you?
Well, it's precisely what oppositions have done, will do, should do.
And Labour did.
Yes, if you think this is a stunt, then Labour, when they were in opposition, stand guilty of exactly the same use of Parliament in order to put pressure on the Prime Minister, and more particularly, as Beth pointed out, on individual MPs. So when I was a Member of Parliament and I trooped in loyally behind whoever was Prime Minister at the time when there were motions of censure or there were particular votes on whether or not post offices should be closed or whatever, it was done. The House of Commons was used as an opportunity to brand me and other Conservative MPs as uncaring or complicit in cover-ups or whatever it might be. That is part of the brutal nature of contemporary politics. Now, one might wish that it were otherwise, but that's what it is. But I do have a measure of sympathy for Keir Starmer.
Wow,
because,
that's quite something to hear, Michael.
Because the original sin here was the choice of Peter Mandelson as ambassador. And it wasn't really a choice about which he was enthusiastic.
Yeah. And also, he's not a liar like Boris Johnson was.
Well, I think let's not relitigate.
Yeah, but let's answer that question, though.
I think that the key thing is we don't know, because we know that the essence of one of the charges that Kemi Badenoch raised today was that the Prime Minister was at the very least economical with the truth in his characterisation of the evidence that Ollie Robbins gave.
This is the sort of micro stuff which people loathe. But, I think that there's been an effort to draw false equivalence here. Boris Johnson lied and lied and lied. And, the Privilege Committee found out he had lied 4 times and probably multiple other times, deliberately. The strongest possible charge people can make about Keir Starmer is he may inadvertently been a bit misleading about something he didn't know. It's not equivalent, and there's a kind of game which I think part of me and certainly the Tory party has been playing, which is try and make and say everyone's the same. It's really bad for democracy Because whatever other flaws that Keir Starmer's got, he's not a liar. He's not like Boris Johnson. They're really very different people.
Can I jump in on that though? Because the point about Keir Starmer, and I think this is why it plays so badly, is he very clearly, in the run-up to that general election and then on the steps of Downing Street, promised to be a different type of Prime Minister, to lead with integrity, accountability, stability, service to the nation, putting himself in the service of the public. And what the public are now seeing is a Prime Minister that put Mandelson in when red flags were raised, and it leaves an impression, whether you think this is fair or unfair, of a Prime Minister that talked about certain standards, but does he act by those standards? And why is it that the head of the Foreign Office has to leave his job over his wrong judgment, or the Chief of Staff resigns over his poor judgment? And the Prime Minister, who says he has poor judgment on this, remains in post. Do you see the problem for Starmer?
I see the problem, and in some ways I agree with you, in that I think Keir Starmer should have owned this mistake earlier, in a full way, not like, yes, I made a mistake, I'm now going to blame someone else for giving me bad advice, which I took. I think he's had this thing, I think actually since I did this interview with him for The Observer, where he admitted all kinds of mistakes, and I think that's the real Keir Starmer. I got something wrong and I learned from it and moving on. And then I think people got to him and said, actually, if you admit mistakes, it makes you look weak. Right. And it's the same thing which we've seen too often, where his instinct is actually to be something, and then he's told, well, no, in this world of politics, you've got to be someone else. You've got to do these really political things, and it doesn't do him credit. And now, so when he, if he had owned that mistake earlier, I don't think had spent the last 2 weeks talking about it. It's this endless process of what happened there. Just no. Everybody knows. The world and his dog knows why he appointed Peter Mandelson. It was a risk which lots of people in the media thought was a great idea, and they knew exactly what Keir Starmer did at the time.
We also, I reported on Mandelson many years ago, and so it was out there. But let's talk about how long Keir's got, because I want to ask you, Michael, because you've got a bit of a track record of, toppling people. I mean, you betrayed Boris Johnson not once but twice. I wondered if you could give the Cabinet some advice on how to get him out.
I think I'm probably the last person that anyone in the Labour Cabinet
quite good at it.
Would listen to. But I think that the point that Tom made earlier about the focus on process, I think goes to the heart of the bigger issue that Starmer faces and the bigger issue that anyone replacing him has to answer, which is what is the mission of the government. So Beth quite understandably made the point that people felt that after the Boris premiership and after the Truss premiership, that restoring integrity to public office was an important thing. It's a necessary but not sufficient thing. And the problem has been the failure of the Labour Party to articulate what the handsome majority that the country gave them is there for.
Yeah, and the missions and the milestones haven't really added up to anything. I mean, Beth, how long do you think he's got then? What's your reading tonight?
I don't know the answer to that. And actually,
going
back,
honest.
I know I don't know the answer to that, but I'm encouraged because everyone I call about it also don't really know the answer to that. And why don't people know the answer to it? Because at the moment, it's very uncertain. There isn't a preferred candidate that the party is settling on. There's a lot of people that talk about bringing Andy Burnham back in, and but he's not in Parliament. There's questions about Angela Rayner. There's questions about Wes Streeting.
Yeah, well, what about Al Khan's?
There's questions. There's questions about John Healey.
I'm not against Al Khan's, but I mean the point Beth's making is absolutely right. That there's lots of people really fed up and in despair and so on. We know that every journalist can speak to people off the record or on the record and get that. But when you look at the possible replacements for Keir Starmer, they are either unavailable, unready, unsuitable, or unwilling.
Where's
nice little duet you did.
Yeah. I mean, we make beautiful music together, Michael. But that's the thing. Politics is a choice. It's not some sort of verdict on Keir Starmer's first 22 months. It's always a choice between better or worse. And right now, at a moment where we might be running out of fuel in 6 weeks. Right now, we're in an incredibly dangerous time for the world. I don't think the public would forgive the Labour Party if with a majority of 165, we go into an inward-looking, civil war, which might end up with a run on the markets, then paying more for their interest rates, and
the Prime Minister made that point in the interview.
I was going to say, Cathy, I mean, the thing that really struck me in your interview was when he, you know, my red lights were flashing when he said to you, people might have to change their holiday plans or how they buy stuff in the supermarkets. I'm like, whoa, that's a big that was further than I had heard him go before.
And he was being cautious as well.
And he was, and actually, going back to what Tom said, I think part of the problem for Starmer at the moment is that his number 10 is hollowed out and he doesn't have that many obvious allies. Now, in politics, you both know this, what you also need are your outriders. You know, you need your outriders to whisper in people's ear and to advocate for you. And he doesn't really have that. But I did speak to one of his key allies today, and they said exactly what Tom said, which is if the Labour Party look in on a 12-week internal contest to replace a Prime Minister while these economic issues are going on, the public will not forgive them. And maybe that's the most potent argument he can make right now.
Great to have your analysis, Beth, and great to have this lovely couple on the sofa.
I know, what a dream team they are.
And we'll be chatting some more later. But let's now have a chat with someone who sits around the Cabinet table with the Prime Minister. Jo Stevens, the Welsh Secretary, is in the Commons Central Lobby. Jo Stevens, is humiliating this? This was a political stunt, and yet 15 Labour MPs went for it.
Yeah, but I think if you look at the list of my colleagues who voted with the opposition, there aren't any names on that list that would surprise you or surprise me, to be perfectly honest. It's regrettable that they did, but it's not a surprise.
Well, I mean, Lou Hague, former Cabinet Minister, she was one of the rebels. And are they all going to lose the whip now?
I'm not responsible for decisions about whipping. That's for the Chief Whip. What I am responsible
but you're in the cabinet,
for,
so you should know the answer.
With my cabinet colleagues, delivering for the country, getting on with the job of government, so that we can get away from the stunt that went on today, that failed so spectacularly, and we'll just get on with governing the country, making sure that we're bringing down bills, tackling the cost of living, and making sure that the United Kingdom is safe and secure in the world.
OK, but Jo, that is precisely the problem, isn't it? That you're not able to get on with the things you want to do to change the country because of all these distractions.
No, I don't.
So I ask you again. I mean, this vote
I don't
was
accept
whipped.
that at all. Just look at this week. We've got the Renters Reform Act coming in. We've had the Employment Rights Act changes, making rights and protections increasing for people right across the country. Once in a generation changes. We've got unemployment, for example, in Wales, where I am. Unemployment is coming down, wages are going up, the economy is stabilised, and we're dealing with two wars, one in Ukraine and one in the Middle East.
And I could take you through any number of U-turns
on the world stage.
I could take you through any number of U-turns that this government has performed. But I ask you again, this vote was whipped. So do those MPs who voted against the government on this, voted against Keir Starmer, will they lose the whip? And if you won't take the whip away, then you've clearly got no authority left as a government.
So, Cathy, as I said to you when you asked me the question the first time, that's a decision for the Chief Whip. That's not my decision. I'm the Secretary of State for Wales. The Chief Whip will make a decision about what happens.
I'm just a bit surprised you don't know that because, you know, you're a member of the Cabinet. I would have thought you would have been briefed by now.
It's not my responsibility. It's not my responsibility.
But it suggests to me that there's a question mark.
People lose the whip or not.
It just suggests to me there's a question mark over whether these rebel MPs will keep the whip. And, you know, if they don't have the whip removed, it just suggests a lack of authority, doesn't it, at the top of the government?
As I say, it's not my decision about removal of the whip against any of my colleagues. It's a matter for the Chief Whip, and you wouldn't expect me to say anything else.
Do you think it was the right decision to whip MPs on this? Given you said it was a political stunt, they should have known, you know, a week out from major elections that, you know, this wasn't going to be very helpful to vote against the Prime Minister on this.
Look, this vote was won overwhelmingly today. The Prime Minister has the full support of the Cabinet and he has broad support right across the Parliamentary Labour Party. And as I've said, this was a stunt ahead of the election. Last week, Kemi Badenoch tried to smear the Prime Minister. Her allegation was disproved. Today, again, she failed in trying to say that the Prime Minister had misled the House. He clearly did not mislead the House because his evidence was corroborated by Sir Philip Barton this morning in the Foreign Affairs Select Committee. So this stunt has failed. We know what it was about. It was ahead of the elections next week.
OK, on those elections next week.
The terrible record of the Tories and the fact that we are delivering for the people of this country.
Right. Well, on those elections next week, a bloodbath is expected. And I spoke to the Prime Minister yesterday and I asked him if he'd take personal responsibility for that. He said he would. Should the Cabinet as an entirety take personal responsibility if those elections go as badly as feared?
We are a team, you know, we are the Labour Party, we are a collective, we succeed together, we fail together. Of course we take responsibility for election results, but we haven't got...
That understanding of our nation's unique bond and role in history is the essence of our special relationship, and we hope it will always remain that way.
Well, the King's visit to the US continued today. He's set to make a speech to a joint session of the US Congress in the next hour. Earlier, the King and Queen were greeted by the President and First Lady with full pomp and circumstance. Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper, US Defence Secretary Pete Hegseth and US Vice President J.D. Vance were also in attendance. Later, there will be a state dinner hosted by Mr Trump. The state visit is the first visit to the United States by a British monarch since 2007, when the late Queen Elizabeth met George W. Bush. And as we heard, there's already been a diplomatic win of sorts for the UK, with the President talking up the so-called special relationship. Well, I've been speaking to Anthony Scaramucci, who worked for Donald Trump as White House Communications Director before a very public falling out with the administration. Anthony Scaramucci, do you think the King's royal visit, you know, this state visit, the first in nearly 2 decades, will do anything to thaw the froideur between the US and UK?
Unfortunately, our State Department is down to a person of one. That's Donald Trump. Our Pentagon is down to a person of one. And I think the King has a good personal rapport with the president. And I think he respects the monarchy and the King himself, as well as the Queen Consort. So for me, I think it's a very good move for the United Kingdom. And it could be a very good softening agent.
Right.
And then up against that, of course, Prime Minister Starmer has had some pretty sharp words for the president. And so I think that's a good blend, actually, for the country.
The King and the royal family generally, they're consummate diplomats, smoothing things over, playing nicely. In a way, the polar opposite of the president. So do you think Donald Trump might learn something from the King?
He's in an unlearnable position. He's turning 80 on June 14th. I mean, he's not learning anything new,
And you mentioned Keir Starmer standing up to Donald Trump on Iran. It was very interesting in the interview he did with us on the show, just how keen he was to emphasise his difference of opinion with Donald Trump over Iran. He clearly sees it as a political selling point here in the UK. Do you think, how much pushback is Trump getting in the country and from his party about his policy in Iran?
Well, listen, I think, the president is unpopular in the UK. He's unpopular in Canada. He's also unpopular in the United States. He only has a 34% approval rating. And so, like Prime Minister Carney, who just got himself a majority in the parliament, I think the Prime Minister Starmer is wise to be critical of the president's foreign policy and to distance himself. I think that will show people that he has a backbone, and I think it'll garner him a lot of political favor long term. I know Prime Minister Starmer's approval ratings are not at their highest right now.
That's diplomatic.
But that strategy is a good one for him.
I just wonder where you think he is on the war in Iran, because, from where we're sitting, it looks very much as if his family and his friends are doing quite well out of the war and the sort of, the war economy, as it were. But do you think he really wants a way out?
I think he wants a way out, certainly. I mean, listen, they've made a decision on the 20th of January last year that they were going to make money off of the presidency. And so they found numerous ways to do that. So this is one of those ways. But this is a very unpopular war here in the United States and in the Western nations. And so, yes, he definitely wants out. But I think we're all finding that this is more of an intractable problem now because, I don't know who in the Pentagon made the decision to go to war without understanding the Mosaic defense doctrine of the Iranians.
This royal visit comes amidst the backdrop of the aftermath of this attempted assassination attempt. The mood feels very febrile in America. Tell us how you view Trump's call for unity. Do you believe it? Is it going to continue or not?
Well, I mean, listen, you and I know, your viewers know he's a very strange guy. He's calling for unity out of one side of his mouth, that he's calling for the end of a civilization on his Truth Social account. So, it's hard to believe the unity stuff. I mean, he wants unity when the timing is right for him. He's also denouncing comedians like Jimmy Kimmel for making jokes, which everybody knows are jokes. Think of the brittleness of that. But yet he's the leader of the United States, most powerful military in the world still, and calling for the end of a civilization. So
yeah, you defend Jimmy Kimmel, do you? Because I mean, just for viewers who might not have seen it, the late night host made a joke about Melania, glowing like an expectant widow, and this was before the shooting. I mean, did that cross a line, or do you justify it in terms of freedom of speech?
Well, listen, I'm a free speech absolutist like most people in America. I don't think it crossed the line. He doubled down on it last night. Jimmy's a friend of mine, and I have a long relationship with him, and I admire his backbone. But again, the president is doing this because he's trying to censor corporate media in the United States. He's gone after people at 60 Minutes. He's gone after ABC News with George Stephanopoulos. And so his attitude is if he can create a chilling effect on the media, he's able to do the things that he's doing without the investigative coverage.
What do you make of Trump's mental state at the moment?
Well, I mean, I don't buy into the dementia argument. I don't think he has the dementia that's always touted on the social media pages. I think he is in decline. He has age-related cognitive issues. He has slowed down a lot. You can see it in the slurring of his speech. He looks very tired. He's falling asleep on camera. Just imagine if Joe Biden was doing that, the outcry in right-wing media. So he has age-related issues. Someone that's turning 80 has a very stressful job. He's obviously overweight if you just look at him, the physical appearance of him. But I don't think he has dementia. This is the Donald Trump that I've known for 20 years. It's just a little more intense.
Just finally, those issues that you've identified, are they sufficient to see him removed from office before his time, in your view?
Well, he should have already been removed from office. I mean, you can't remember to tell somebody that you're going to end their civilization is a war crime. So threatening a war crime is actually a war crime. And so if we had a sturdier group of people in the Congress or a sturdier group of people in the cabinet, he would have been removed, either impeached and removed from office by the Senate, or the cabinet would have gotten together and said, okay, he's not fit to serve the American people and he's not abiding to the Constitution. So yes, I've already said that. I've said that publicly on my X feed. I've said that publicly on my podcast. Of course, he should have already been removed from office. And I think that people will have to answer for this.
Well, as we sit here now, we're not too far from the King's historic address to the US Congress, which we'll go to as soon as it starts. It will, of course, be the second time a British monarch has addressed a joint meeting of Congress, the first being the late Queen Elizabeth II in 1991. In the meantime, let's bring in Michael and Tom. So, Michael, do you think the UK is going to get much out of this visit, apart from sort of symbolism and feeling a bit warm about things?
Not a huge amount, no, because while obviously the King and Queen are diplomatic assets and everything has been choreographed with great care, next week there'll be a warm glow, but Trump's attention, notoriously short, will be on something else. And the fundamentals of the relationship between Britain and America rest on a variety of foundations. But anyone dealing with this relationship diplomatically has to take account of the fact that Trump is capricious, short-termist and transactional.
And it's just a nightmare to deal with, isn't it, for a British Prime Minister? And, I spoke to the Prime Minister yesterday, and he was revelling in the idea of standing up to Trump. Do you think something's changed? Do you think he can go further?
I don't think he's going to get into this sort of tit-for-tat name-calling, and I think he's been very restrained in that. And I think he deserves credit for that. He sets out what Britain's position is, that we follow international law. He sets out why we're not involved in this probably illegal war. And he defends the national interest. But, Trump's trying to goad him into some sort of playground name-calling stuff. And he's, I think, risen above it. And that's, we were talking earlier about why I don't think Keir Starmer should go now. That's another factor. I think it's had a really sure touch on the global stage,
do you
which hasn't
agree
always
with
been the
that?
case domestically, but globally it's been great.
Do you agree with that? Because, Kemi Bain not misjudged it a bit on Iran. She was kind of more, backing Donald Trump, and Keir held back.
I don't think it was a misjudgment, but I also think that Tom is right that from Starmer's point of view, from his party's point of view, and true to his convictions, it would have been very difficult for him to have supported the American military adventure. I think that others, including Tony Blair, have made the case for a closer alignment with America. They're both legitimate foreign policy choices, but I think for the Prime Minister, behaving in a dignified way when you disagree is the right thing.
Well, is the King going to be able to be dignified in disagreement with Donald Trump? We sort of expect he will be, but do you think there'll be hints in the Congress speech of where there is a gulf between UK policy and US policy?
I think the King is always dignified, but my understanding is the King had some reservations about having to host Donald Trump, and he's not particularly comfortable with the kind of president that he is. In fact, there's a story I can tell you about when Keir Starmer went over to deliver this letter from the King, and he was very worried about the royal protocol because he didn't want the letter to be used by Trump and the royal family didn't want the letter to be used by Trump as a sort of a media moment. So he's trying to give the letter to the president before the cameras came in. And there's a whole flummox. And eventually the letter had to be tossed to Keir Starmer over the heads of the presidential advisors, which Keir Starmer caught. Trump saw what was happening and said, stop, wait for the cameras. And so, Trump wants to use the royal family as a TV prop.
Yeah,
I don't think the King's going to be
real
entirely comfortable about that, but he'll do the best for the country, as he always does.
I mean, and talking of letters as well, King Charles does let ministers know what he thinks, doesn't he? Did you ever get a spider memo from King Charles?
No, I didn't, but he did let me know his views on a number of things one-on-one.
Can you elaborate?
No.
But I mean, do you think he'll be doing that for Donald Trump, won't he?
I think that he is shrewd enough.
Brexit, Michael.
I think he's shrewd enough to know that there can be a huge number of conversations that they can have without getting into controversial territory.
Mm. I mean, because he is, he's seasoned at this stuff. But
completely, yeah.
Even so, as Tom was pointing out about, Donald Trump can easily make things awkward for him, can't
he could, but I think that this is one occasion that Donald Trump would not want to mismanage. So I think it's the case that for the American public, they may have different views about Donald Trump being disrespectful towards different foreign leaders, whether it's the Dutch Prime Minister or the Ukrainian Prime Minister. But the role the King plays in this sort of collective imagination of most Americans would mean that disrespect for him, even more than disrespect for the Pope, is a line he shouldn't cross.
It's fascinating to hear your insights, because you've both got these lovely stories. I mean, next time, just tell us about the letters. We'll sort that. Well, of course, the shadow of Jeffrey Epstein has lingered over the King's visit to the US. Tina Brown has been described as the only person who appears in the Epstein files whose reputation has actually improved. One of the first to report on sexual abuse by the billionaire. Her stellar career has included becoming editor-in-chief of Tatler, Vanity Fair, The New Yorker, and Talk, plus launching the Daily Beast and founding the Women in the World Summits. She now writes the weekly Substack column Fresh Hell and will host next week's Truth Tellers Summit for investigative journalism. Tina Brown, the King addressing Congress, that's going to be a really important speech, and it will be carefully couched, won't it?
Yes, he's going to be very careful, and it's all going to be stressing, of course, the bonds, the fact that there have been times in the past when these two countries, these two great friends, and
Tina, I think we're losing your line, which is very sad, because I wanted to hear how you're going to end that sentence. We'll try and come back to you when we've got it a little bit more stable. But let's just carry on with the panel here, my duo here. Perhaps you can finish Tina Brown's sentence for her. But it's, he's going to choose his words very carefully. Yes. But there are going to be diplomatic minefields, aren't there?
There are. But the King himself and the team advising him will know the various notes to stress. There are enough areas of common interest, both historic and current, for the King to leave everyone in Congress with a warm glow, without him having to as it were, perjure himself in anyone's eyes. So everyone knows that on questions, for example, like the environment, that the King and Donald Trump start from very different positions, but it's not going to be the case that the King would consider an address to Congress as the opportunity to remind people of our debt to the planet.
Right, well, let's go back to Tina now. Tina Brown, I hope we've got your line a little bit more stable now.
I hope so. I mean, listen.
It sounds perfect now.
I'm not sure where you lost me.
Well, we lost you pretty much as soon as you started. So just recap that thought about how careful the King is going to have to be in this address to Congress.
Well, I think he's going to be very, very careful, but he's got so many things that he can do. It's all going to be about the bonds, the things that can be made to work. The fact that in the past there have been moments when these two great allies have disagreed, but they've always managed to renew those bonds and come back together. I think that he'll very much focus on the military part. I think he'll talk about his own service in the Navy. I think that he will obviously, frankly, as a kind of little bit of a knife twist to Trump, who dissed, the UK and the military and NATO, in these recent remarks, which were so unpopular. And I think he will, reinforce that great bond of the troops, fighting together in World War II and in Afghanistan and Iraq. So all of these things, and I think he's going to find a way probably to talk about the environment, which he knows is a lost cause with Trump. But he will talk about probably the great beauties of the American scenery, which leads him to reflect, blah, blah. So I don't think you're going to get away, Trump's going to get away without something, or Congress rather will get away without something from Charles about the environment, even though, he knows they have absolutely no interest in it, frankly.
So you'll be able to read between the lines fairly effectively. I wonder, though, given your knowledge of the royal family, you've written extensively about it, what do you think the King really thinks of Donald Trump?
I think he's absolute anathema to the King, frankly. I mean, on every single level. I mean, for a start, he's pretty much single-handedly blown up the climate movement. This war in Iran, where he was so disrespectful to NATO and the European allies, would have been absolute anathema to Charles. His Charles, who is a great promoter of interfaith initiatives, would have been absolutely appalled by his behaviour and his comments about the Pope. I don't really think that there's really anything that Charles. I mean, look at his taste. I mean, I love the idea of Charles, who's such a kind of refined connoisseur of art, etc., looking around the Oval Office, which is now like Liberace's, Las Vegas house. I mean, festooned with gold everywhere you turn, and this enormous ballroom that's being erected,
a carbuncle, perhaps Charles might describe it as.
Exactly. But he won't show any of it. He will show no daylight between him and the King. And I mean, being able to get on with someone doesn't mean you have to like them. I mean, the Queen spent half of her reign, smiling at people she couldn't stand. Yeah. And Charles will probably the King will, I think, find a way to make it all very chummy, actually. And he knows that's his job. It's his job to do that.
Yeah. You mentioned Iran earlier. I mean, we're at a sort of inflection point, aren't we, in Donald Trump's presidency? And I just wonder whether he's in the mood, perhaps, to learn something from the King, or is that impossible?
I don't think that Trump can learn anything from somebody like the King, quite honestly. I mean, the whole problem with Iran is America's a country with no memory going to war with a country which is all memory, right? I mean, the lack of understanding of the multi-textured, complex layers of Iranian society and power structures is so completely, a zero, frankly, with Trump and his administration. I don't think that he can really get or absorb anything particularly profound about Iran. He just wants to know how to beat the hell out of them. He thinks that there is only one negotiating posture, which is force, which is, he doesn't believe really in negotiations. He thinks that, what really amuses me is when he talks about sending, his team of his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, and real estate friend, Steve Witkoff, to go to Pakistan and come back with a deal. Well, I mean, I was talking to, former Secretary of State John Kerry the other day, and he was telling me about how he once spent sort of 19 days, sort of negotiating sort of one point. I mean, it took nearly 2 years to do that last Iran deal, because it's a painstaking process of bureaucratic and foreign policy dance and bait and switch and all the things that go into it. There is absolutely no way that Trump can just dispatch these two real estate guys and come back with a deal. It's just not going to happen.
Well, Tina Brown, thank you very much. Great to hear your thoughts. Really interesting.
Thank you.
Well, earlier today, an event was held on Capitol Hill, attended by Virginia Giuffre's brother and Democrat politicians to urge Congress to take action to prevent abuse and support survivors. This follows calls in the US for the King to address the Epstein scandal, as we were chatting just there with Tina about in his speech this evening.
I think it is a missed opportunity, and it would be tone deaf for him not to speak to the plight of the survivors and the crimes of Epstein, especially given that we're having this roundtable on the same day, given that we wrote a letter to him, given that the British ambassador has said that he plans to address the survivors.
Well, I've been speaking to Sigrid McCauley, managing partner at Boyes Schiller Law Firm and a lawyer who's represented many Epstein survivors, including Virginia Giuffre herself. Sigrid McCauley, the state visit by the King to the US comes 2 days after the anniversary of Virginia Giuffre's death. And yet the King and Queen are not meeting the Epstein survivors. I just wondered what you made of that.
The King is really missing an opportunity here to lead with dignity and courage in the way that, frankly, Virginia Giuffre led in her lifetime as she fought for transparency, for accountability for these Epstein survivors. I think he's made a significant mistake. It takes courage to stand up and do the right thing, and he has the opportunity to do that here, and he's choosing not to.
I mean, the palace are saying that if any meeting would sort of potentially jeopardise police inquiries. Do they have a point on that?
Certainly, there's always legal concerns. However, those would not be implicated by the King and the Queen just listening to survivors. These women have great suggestions that any legislator should be listening to, any monarch should be listening to. We don't want to make the mistakes of the past. We have to learn from these survivors. Epstein was able to facilitate these crimes for over 2 decades. We need to learn from that. And the King and the Queen and others in power should be sitting down and hearing these survivors.
There's been a real reckoning for the royal family, of course. You know, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor arrested on suspicion of misconduct in public office, released pending investigations. He denies all wrongdoing. But do you have any confidence that justice in the round will be done?
I'm always hopeful that justice will be done. Virginia fought for it for over a decade, speaking her truth and coming forward with the information to try to help authorities to be able to go after the people that harm not only her, but many individuals. Seeing that activity in Europe and in London is a positive step forward. So I am hopeful that the authorities will do their job and hold the individuals, including Andrew, accountable for the harms that they've caused.
There was that extraordinary picture as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor was released from custody, ashen-faced in the back of a car. I wondered when you saw that, what you made of that, a really historic moment.
It was a historic moment seeing him in that car because it was a movement toward accountability. He had been called in, arrested in that moment, and charges can be pending against him. And that's something that we haven't seen where royals are held accountable in that way. So I do think we are seeing some glimmers of justice that we haven't seen in the past.
When you look back to, for example, the Profumo scandal and how previous public figures have tried to rehabilitate themselves, what would the survivors like to see Andrew do, apart from the point you make about helping justice take its course? Just personally, is there anything he could do to, in some way, make amends?
I think what Andrew is missing in this moment is a sincere apology to all of the survivors because they've had to fight so hard to get justice. It shouldn't be this hard for them. I think listening to them, both the royal family as they come on their visit, and others should be listening to these survivors, learning from them, helping them effectuate change so that these atrocities don't happen again in the future.
Just finally, there's been a vigil in Washington, D.C. to mark the 1-year anniversary of Virginia Giuffre's death. I just wondered what you thought her legacy would be.
her legacy is strength and courage in the face of the most significant, formidable opponents. I mean, she taught us that you can stand up and be brave and you can make change. And I think that that is so significant for survivors to hear and to see. Her words, which she left for us in her book, Nobody's Girl, are so powerful. That's a #1 best-selling book in the United States now. And what that tells me is that people are listening. They want to learn from her courage and from her legacy. And I think that we will continue to use her as an example as we move forward, to be courageous in our own actions.
Well, just to clarify, Prince Andrew was arrested on suspicion of misconduct in public office. He wasn't charged, as Tina Brown suggested, and he, of course, denies all wrongdoing. Michael and Tom are still sitting pretty on the sofa. We've got the King, who's about to arrive in Congress, give that important speech. There should be some kind of apology mentioned to the survivors, the Epstein survivors, shouldn't there?
I think the King and the Queen feel agonised about what Andrew is alleged to have done, and certainly an enormous amount of sympathy with the victims. For all sorts of reasons, including legal, it would be very, very difficult for the King and the Queen to have met the victims. But it's not just the damage to the royal family and its reputation. I know that for a host of reasons, the Queen in particular feels a personal sense of hurt and pain at what Andrew's alleged to have done.
Well, she's spoken about her own sexual assault, hasn't she? Very, very movingly. Tom, do you think that would be appropriate for the King to make some kind of gesture to the survivors?
I think in these cases, it's always good if people take what's sometimes a political controversy back to the real pain of real people. And then that, in that instance, it's the victims and survivors. I suspect there's so many more women who have also faced this from other sort of rich and powerful men who we don't know about, who we don't have the email caches of. There is this irony, isn't there, that the King never hung out with Jeffrey Epstein. Keir Starmer never met Jeffrey Epstein. And yet the President of America, he went to his parties. And yet who's taking the blows here? It's the royal family and the British Prime Minister. And the real victims, their voices haven't been heard enough.
They haven't been heard.
But in this political controversy, the fact that Trump seems to think he can get away with everything, that seems to be part of the problem.
Although, of course, he denies any wrongdoing, of course. Well, it's a good point, though, isn't it, Michael?
It is. I mean, I think Tom's point is very well made. The first, that the experience of the victims and survivors is horrific. And the second related one, which is that at the moment, I think the only person connected with his exploitation, Epstein's exploitation, who's faced any criminal consequences has been Ghislaine Maxwell.
A woman.
Exactly. And so, again, Trump's association with Epstein is well known. The extent to which Trump was aware of Epstein's activities and character, I don't know. But it's certainly the case that he could not, Epstein, have acted alone.
Final thought on the speech that the King's about to make. How do you think Congress will receive him?
Warmly. I think that across the board, it will be natural for Republicans and Democrats, notwithstanding the fact that, of course, this is the 250th anniversary of America getting rid of his great-great-grandfather as king. Nevertheless, there will be a warm feeling, I'm sure. And I think that the number of people who would be motivated or feel inclined to cause trouble. No, I mean, for some of them, it will be a sort of Downton Abbey-esque moment and a chance to luxuriate in what the two countries have in common. So it will be bipartisan.
And Tom, you've probably visited Congress in your journalistic days. I mean, you're still a journalist, of course, always a journalist at heart. But I mean, it will be a moment of sort of pageantry, won't it?
It will. But the point of this is that the relationship between Britain and America goes back centuries, decades in terms of our military alliance, and it should be strong enough to survive this president. Huge damage has been done. I know the King was really upset about the president's comments about Britain's military, and the people had lost their lives fighting alongside America and wanted actually to phone the president about it. That shouldn't be what he's talking about today. It's about, can the relationship between the two countries get past this president? He's only got another 2 years to go, and hopefully those ties will survive it.
Brief final thought?
I'm sure it will. There are deep changes in American politics, but it is the case that whoever replaces Trump, Republican or Democrat, the nature of the relationship will change. And like Tom, I hope it will be better.
Well, that's it from me and the sofa guests tonight, but we're, of course, back tomorrow at the same time.